successful and a holding against at all times.
Be careful!
Government officials insist that this is an isolated incident of the packet for anyone. But then, who knows,
The dense jungle pulsed with life. Mosquitoes swarmed in the humid jungle air, and somewhere beyond the flickering firelight, something massive shifted in the darkness. The Baka guides huddled together, whispering a name. Mokele Mbembe. The year was 1913. Deep in the heart of German-occupied Cameroon, modern-day Cameroon, an ambitious explorer named Captain Ludwig Freiherr von Stein zu Lausnitz prepared for an expedition unlike any other. Captain Ludwig, a German officer and adventurer, heard rumors of a mysterious creature lurking in the dense swamps and rivers of Central Africa. The local tribes spoke of it in hushed tones, a massive beast larger than an elephant with a long serpentine neck, a massive muscular tail, and a hunger for destruction. They called it Mokele Mbembe, which means the one who stops the flow of rivers. Captain Ludwig's mission was not to seek cryptids or chase tales. He had been sent by the German colonial government to survey the land, map unexplored territories, and assess natural resources deep within the Congo Basin. But the tales of Mokele Mbembe were impossible to ignore. As the captain traveled further inland, the stories grew more detailed and more chilling. The creature was not a mere folk tale. The tribes insisted it was very real, and it was very feared. The local Baka people told him, "It lives in deep waters of the jungle. It emerges at dusk, crushing trees and scaring away hippos. It will kill a man if he gets too close." Some described canoes being overturned. Others spoke of livestock and fishermen vanishing near certain riverbanks. To some of the tribes, the creature was more than a beast. It was spoken of as an evil spirit. The captain was beyond intrigued. As a man of logic and science, though, he dismissed superstition, but he could not ignore the sheer consistency of these reports. With a team of European soldiers, local porters, and reluctant tribal guides, Captain Ludwig plunged into the uncharted jungle. The air grew heavier, thick with the scent of damp earth. Steamy swamps gave way to treacherous rivers, and with every step, an unspoken fear tightened its grip upon the group. The land was untouched by modern civilization. The sounds of insects, birds, and the distant howls of unseen predators resonated through the air. The deeper they went, the more reluctant his local guides became. One evening, after setting up camp near Lake Tele, Captain Ludwig gathered his men around the fire. He pressed the oldest guide, an elder named Ikela, for more details. Ikela hesitated before finally speaking. "I have seen it once, many years ago. A great beast with a long neck, a great tail, and the power to shake the water. It fears no man, but it hates hippos and will drive them away. Those who disturb its waters do not return." The captain scribbled furiously in his notebook, documenting every word the elder spoke. His skepticism wavered. Could a gigantic reptile, unknown to science, still roam the Congo? On the third week of their journey, Ludwig's team reached a vast, stagnant body of water, partially hidden by thick vegetation. This was Lake Tele, the heart of the legend. The guides refused to go any further. They declared, "The spirit of the water lives there." The captain, however, was undeterred. He ordered a small reconnaissance team to scout the area. That night, the jungle held its breath. The usual hum of insects and distant calls of unseen beasts fell into an eerie silence. Then, without warning, it came. A deep, guttural roar echoed through the jungle, rising from the depths of the water like something ancient had just awoken. The sound was unlike anything they had ever heard, a low, reverberating growl as if the earth itself had spoken. Worse than the mysterious roar was now the sensation that whatever made it could now be watching them. The next morning, one of the scouts returned breathless and wide-eyed. "We saw something," he gasped. A shadow moving beneath the water. It was enormous. The captain demanded more details. The scouts described a long serpentine neck breaking the surface of the water, then vanishing with a thunderous splash. But before the captain could witness it for himself, the expedition would take a dark turn. That same night, one of the porters vanished without a sound. His bedroll lay untouched, his rifle still leaning against a tree, but his footprints, deep and deliberate, led straight to the water's edge and then stopped. No sign of struggle, no sign of panic, just a single ripple disturbing the moonlit surface of the lake. Panic gripped the camp. The guides refused to stay another night. The jungle, the rivers, the very air itself seemed to whisper a warning. Leave while you still can. Ludwig, though shaken, could not ignore the weight of the evidence. He had not seen Mokele Mbembe with his own eyes, but he had gathered first-hand testimony, unsettling sounds, and strange movements in the water. Faced with an increasingly restless crew, dwindling supplies, and the mysterious disappearance, Captain Ludwig made the difficult decision. They would have to leave Lake Tele and return to German-occupied territory. His report submitted upon his return was never officially published by the German government. Some say it was dismissed as a mere folktale. Others whisper that it was covered up to prevent hysteria. The captain's notes, written in German, were allegedly later uncovered by cryptozoologists. They detailed one of the most compelling accounts of Mokele Mbembe ever recorded, a gigantic reptilian creature with a long neck and tail, a powerful territorial beast capable of chasing away even hippos, a herbivore yet fierce when disturbed. Though he himself never saw the creature with his own eyes, Ludwig's testimony laid the foundation for future expeditions. After his return, Captain Ludwig faded into obscurity. Some say he continued his work in Africa, while others believe he was discredited for reporting such an unbelievable tale. Did the captain truly uncover a lost dinosaur in the depths of the Congo? Or was he simply caught in the web of ancient lore and local legends? Whatever the truth may be, one thing is certain. The legend of Mokele Mbembe refuses to die. Welcome back to the Dancing Toaster. I'm so glad January is over, my friends. It was far too eventful for my liking, but it wasn't all bad either. A big thank you for the many who have given through buymeacoffee.com and PayPal, and another thank you to my patrons that have signed up for the Patreon. I made a big announcement last week for my patrons. Ladies and gentlemen, exclusive content is finally coming. I know some aren't fond of Patreon, I understand, but if you want the exclusive content that's coming, that's where it'll be.
What's the exclusive content?
I'm glad you asked. It's a brand new show, actually. Under the banner of the Dancing Toaster, I'm launching the Man-Eating Toaster. It'll be for my patrons on Patreon.
What's the man-eating toaster gonna be about?
Yet another great question. Are you fascinated by creepy cults? Well, so am I. The Man-Eating Toaster is going to be about cults and crime. In Dancing Toaster fashion, we're going to examine cults throughout the world and throughout time. You can expect my sass and storytelling as well as some of my teaching. As much as I enjoy deep dives into those things, many of the ones out there are very limp-wristed and void of spiritual truth. A lot of that kind of content seems to mock all spiritual beliefs, especially Christians, and they kind of throw us into one big pile. We're going to draw hard lines of separation between truth and error, orthodoxy and cults. We're going to talk about who they are, what they believed, where it all went wrong, and what they did in their insanity. And like I said, we're going to approach them the same way I approach topics on here. If that sounds like something you'd be into, head over to the Patreon. I only have one level. It's $5 a month. The Man-Eating Toaster launches at the end of February. My goal is to have one out every other Thursday. It may eventually go weekly, but I'm still doing side hustles to make ends meet on top of the main show and on top of my main priority, which is pastoral ministry of Evergreen Calvary Chapel. But enough housekeeping. Let's get back down to business. Dragony, dinosaur-y business. Here we go. I told you this week would be a part 2. Last time we were together, we talked about dragons, dinosaurs, and serpentine cryptids like Nessie. We argued they could all be one and the same. We emphasized the point that dinosaur is a word we use today that's less than 200 years old, and that every culture everywhere had their own words for large reptilian creatures. Now, being that I made it pretty evident how I feel about most reptilian cryptids, I also made it clear how I feel about the age of the Earth in the process. I believe man and large reptiles coexisted with one another. I believe this was possible because the Earth isn't as old as we've been told. If you disagree with me because you lean towards an older age of the Earth, hopefully we can still kick it. Hopefully you're grown up enough that you can handle opinions that are different than yours. I respect your position and your right to hold it, and I pray you'll respect mine. I love the reviews of the show that say, I don't agree with everything this guy says, but I appreciate how he says it. I appreciate you. I love this. We don't have to agree on everything. Dr. Michael Heiser was instrumental in my life in that regard. There are certain non-negotiables of the faith, let me be clear. And though I'm fairly passionate about this one, I, for one, don't believe the age of the Earth is one of those non-negotiables. Dr. Heiser leaned toward an older Earth model, whereas Dr. Tim Chaffee is like me and takes a more literal approach to the Old Testament, concluding in a younger Earth. But both men take the Lord and the text seriously. I love John Lennox and Hugh Ross, but I also love Jason Lyle and Ken Ham. All of these men have been instrumental in my faith walk, and guess what? None of them are even within my same denominational Calvary Chapel bubble. Although if you're wondering who has blessed me within my own camp, it's Jack Hibbs, David Guzik, and Mike Winger. Those are the big three. Love those guys. Incredible blessing to my life. Whether they know it or not, they probably don't, but they are. I say all that to highlight the vastness of the body of Christ and the various views that we hold about the world that we all agree that God made. Though we debate and discuss what he did, how he did it, and most of all, when he did it, we all agree we wouldn't be here without him, and none of us would be saved without him either. Just know that when it comes to reptilian cryptids like the Lake Chelan dragon, Loch Ness monster, or Mokele Mbembe, I'm going to lean toward physical, not spiritual, and actually quite literal. I'm also going to talk about dinosaurs every time and push back on the widely accepted view that these unique creatures existed prehistorically. I do believe they got here before us, but just barely. Now what do I mean? Well, let's do something we didn't do so much of the last episode, and that is dive into a biblical text, one of the greatest and I believe one of the most important in all of Scripture. Genesis chapter 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. And God said,
Let there be light.
And there was light. And God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. And God said,
Let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters.
And God made the expanse and separated the waters that were under the expanse from the waters that were above the expanse. And it was so. And God called the expanse heaven. And there was evening, and there was morning, the second day. And God said,
Let the waters under the heavens be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear.
And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the waters that were gathered together he called seas. And God saw that it was good. And God said,
Let the earth sprout vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees bearing fruit, in which is their seed, each according to its kind on the earth.
And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed according to their own kinds, and trees bearing fruit in which is their seed, each according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the third day. And God said,
Let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let them be signs for seasons, and for days, and for years. And let them be lights in the expanse of the heavens to give light upon the earth.
And it was so. And God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night, and the stars also. And God set them in the expanse of the heavens to give light on the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the fourth day. And God said,
Let the waters swarm with swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the expanse of the heavens.
So God created the great sea creatures and every living creature that moves, with which the waters swarm according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying,
Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let birds multiply on the earth.
And there was evening, and there was morning, the fifth day. And God said,
Let the earth bring forth living creatures according to their kinds, livestock and creeping things, and beasts of the earth according to their kinds.
and it was so. And God made the beasts of the earth according to their kinds, and the livestock according to their kinds, and everything that creeps on the ground according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. Then God said,
Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth.
So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. And God blessed them. And God said to them,
Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. Behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is on the face of all the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the heavens, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has the breath of life, I have given every green plant for food.
And it was so. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day. So day 1, he created space and this wet dirt rock, then he created light. Day 2, he created atmosphere. It says he separated the waters that were under the expanse from the waters that were above it. He brought forth land on day 3, and from the land he created vegetation. Day 4, he created the celestial bodies, the sun, the moon, and the stars also. Day 5, he created sea creatures to fill the waters and avian creatures to fill the skies. And on day 6, he created the remaining beasts of the earth according to their various kinds, and then he made his human image bearers. And he commanded them to subdue the earth, and to be fruitful, and to multiply upon it.
But don't Peter say that a day is like 1,000 years to the Lord?
Well, in 2 Peter 3, 8 and 9, it says the following, But do not overlook this one fact, beloved, that with the Lord 1 day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as 1 day. The Lord is not slow to fulfill his promise, as some count slowness, but is patient toward you, not wishing that any should perish, but that all should reach repentance. So, Peter is not talking about creation, he's not talking about Genesis, but rather the timelessness and the patience of our God. I hate how this verse gets manipulated and turned into a lens in which people want to interpret Genesis 1 when they're totally unrelated. First of all, it wouldn't give you the millions you're looking for. It may give you 6,000 extra years, but not the millions and millions that secular science has popularized. Can we know what God had in view in Genesis 1? Is there a passage that we can use to interpret the use of yom, the Hebrew word for day in Genesis 1? Yeah, it's actually really easy. It's in the Ten Commandments. The fourth one specifically proves the point exactly. Exodus 20, 8 to 11. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, you or your son or your daughter, your male servant or your female servant, or your livestock, or the sojourner who is within your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested on the 7th day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Hermeneutically speaking, we use the Bible to interpret the Bible. We use the Bible to understand the Bible. I don't understand all the debate about what yom means in Genesis 1. Yom, meaning day in Hebrew, is like the English word. It does have depth of meaning. If we use the Bible to interpret the Bible here, though, yom isn't being used to refer to an age or time period. Exodus 20 verse 11 lets us know that the usage of yom is referring to a literal day. It's clearly not saying to work 6,000 years and then take a 1,000-year Sabbath, is it? Of course not. All of my
A day is 1,000 years.
folk, that's absurd. I'm just taking the text for what it says. You're free to disagree. You're free to go listen to inspiring philosophy, give you tons of information that lines up with the mainstream secular narratives of the world. I love him. I love his material. We agree on a lot of stuff, but we would definitely not agree on this. My show would probably not be his favorite, and that's fine. But Exodus 20 offers one of the most compelling hermeneutics for viewing our origins. I will say Dr. Hugh Ross offers some of the most compelling insights on the old Earth position. If you just can't separate yourself from this idea, you would love him. I love him. I have so much love and respect for him, and I've been blessed by his ministry, by his insight. We're going to talk about him a lot in Season 3, actually. But I have a hard time reconciling some of the old Earth positions biblically, as well as theologically. One of the biggest theological issues for me is death. Genesis 3 shows us that it was human sin that brought death into the world. And Romans 5 echoes this reality. I'll just give you a taste from verse 12. Therefore, just as sin came into the world through one man, and death through sin, and so death spread to all men because all sinned. Now, when you go read the chapter, that point is made even clearer. Older Earth models, though, require millions of years of death before a fall even takes place. These are questions that all of our positions and worldviews have to answer.
What's all this got to do with dinosaurs?
Calm down, we gotta lay a foundation. I told you, they were here before us, just not millions of years before us. A straightforward reading of Genesis 1 reveals some of the seafaring ones came on day 5, and the others came on day 6, just before you and I. When God created all the beasts of the earth, He created them. Then after He created them, He created His human image bearers. You were not some cosmic accident, nor did you come about from millions of years of change, failure, and death. Darwinian thought seeks to reduce man to an advanced animal that is a product of time, matter, and chance. This is a demonic lie. Let's work on trashing Darwin and his garbage ideas a little bit. They weren't fully his, he just made them popular. If you were walking on the beach and you saw a message that said 3 simple words, Nellie loves Michelle. I do love Michelle, by the way. Michelle is my wife. Baby, I love you. That's 20 small characters, 18 letters, 2 spaces, making 3 words. Would you look at that simple message and say,
Wow, it's remarkable how the wind and waters and debris and crabs randomly etch this message into the sand?
that's stupid, right? You're smart enough to know that this simple message came from an intelligent mind, or at least a semi-functioning one. Darwin knew bupkis about genetics and information science. If he had, his theory would have immediately fallen flat on its face. It would have died on the poisonous vine from which it came. Your DNA contains intelligent information, far more than 20 characters. It contains hundreds of miles of code that is far more complicated than my simple message on the beach. Just as no amount of time and accidental forces could create a simple message in the sand that simply says, Nellie loves Michelle, no amount of time or accidental processes could have brought about sentient life on this planet, let alone the amount of biological complexity that exists upon it.
Given enough time, ain't anything possible?
That is one of the most ridiculous and ignorant ideas to ever come out of the human brain or be uttered from the human mouth. That's as big brain as the ones that suggest getting a room full of monkeys and typewriters together will eventually produce something akin to Shakespeare. That's absurd. And I love that they actually tried this in 2003. Researchers at Peyton Zoo in England conducted an experiment by placing 6 crested macaques in a room with a computer keyboard for a month. The results were less than promising. The monkeys did not type a single coherent word. They smashed the keyboard, urinated on it, used it as a toilet. One of them eventually managed to type a 5-letter sequence. It was 5 S's. The researchers concluded that monkeys are more interested in destroying keyboards than writing literature. I could have told you that one. When I say they didn't type a single coherent word, by the way, I mean it. Even words that are a single letter require spaces in order for you to get credit, right? A and I can form a word. In the sentence, I saw a bat, that sentence has 2 words with a single letter, but the spaces are required to make it clear that it's a word and not a misplaced letter, right? Not happenstance, but intentional. And no intentionality was there, even with the A's and I's. Chaos and chance produce nothing. They never have, they never will. Let's think about it from a different perspective. I want you to think about some Legos. Now, I know technically Lego, singular and plural, is supposed to be Lego, but it feels wrong, so I'm going to say Legos. Sorry if that bothers you. Think about the simplest and ugliest Lego cars that every single one of us made when we were kids. It was ugly, it was pathetic, but it did the trick. Think about the simplest and ugly Lego house that every single one of us made when we were kids. It usually had 4 walls, at least 1 door, and maybe 1 window. Nothing too crazy, but it got the job done. Now imagine I got a big bag full of Legos, and I shake the bag and I dump it out. Will anything come out of that bag remotely resembling your ugly house or car you built? Nope. What if I add Legos? Nope. What if I shake it longer? Will I get anything then? Nope.
What's that got to do with what we talking about?
Well, DNA contains coded instructions full of complicated messaging, complex information used to build proteins, and those proteins are the building blocks of life. Have you ever seen Lego blocks put themselves together? Nope. What about if you put them next to the instructions? Does that help? Nope. An intelligent mind made the blocks. An intelligent mind made the instructions. An intelligent mind must put them together. At its heart, Darwinian thought is atheistic, and atheism is unsustainable. The notion that nothing created everything and then nothing started to intelligently put things together is just ridiculous. Abiogenesis is one of the most unscientific ideas on the planet that is embraced by a vast number of secular scientists that reject God. What's abiogenesis? That's when they say life came from non-life, which is scientifically impossible, yet that's what every atheist must accept. They'll violate all of their rules in order to get this thing going and then start to try and play by some rules. It doesn't work that way. So again, they say everything came from nothing. Magically, order came from chaos and disorder. Life came from non-life, so not only did the material come from out of nowhere, nothing began to assemble it. It's ridiculous. Then here's another good one. After all this ignorance, you also must accept that consciousness could come from mindless matter. These are the miracles that atheists all are required to accept. Now some are upset because you might be thinking,
I'm no atheist, I'm simply an old earth creationist.
or perhaps you're saying,
I simply believe in theistic evolution. I believe in God, and I believe in evolution. I think he used evolution.
I'm arguing what many young earth creationists before me have argued. And that is, why are we so quick to accept ideas that largely came about from godless Darwinistic thought? Darwinism, or macroevolution, was popularized because the godless desired a way to explain our origins without the Bible and without God. Darwinian macroevolution takes time, so the timelines and ages of the earth just got longer and longer and longer in order to fit his godless ideology and to accommodate its many impossibilities. I'm making a bold claim that some will find frustrating, but old Earth and macroevolutionary thought were born of Darwinian atheistic philosophies that sought to explain our world without the Bible and without God. As these ideas became more popular, the church began to find ways to force these contrary worldviews to align with one another. I'm saying bad trees produce bad fruit. We don't have to make these things fit with one another, because I believe the popular, widely accepted ideas are a lot weaker than they'd like to admit. So to reel it all back in, dragons were what people called dinosaurs throughout time as the two coexisted with one another. The prevailing thought amongst theistic evolutionists and old Earth creationists is that our ancestors simply stumbled upon dinosaur bones and fossils, and then they created a bunch of myths and stories around them. They claim that this is the simplest and most logical explanation. I think it's incredibly presumptuous and doesn't explain the countless accounts from all over the world where people are talking about and depicting these creatures throughout the world. You guys know I love talking about Native American stories. A cryptid episode wouldn't be complete without them. I've talked a lot about the ones that were reported in the water. Let's switch it up and talk about those that took to the skies. Many Native American tribes have legends of massive flying creatures reminiscent of certain dinosaurs. The Thunderbird is described as an enormous flying beast, more reptile than bird. In some regions, they were capable of hunting whales. They would often be blamed for storms, and they bear striking similarities to large pterosaurs. Many Thunderbird myths do not describe traditional avian creatures, but instead depict creatures with features more closely aligned with pterosaurs. Many legends mention a long, sharp beak lined with teeth, an attribute absent in birds today, but present in certain pterosaur species. Additionally, many Thunderbird accounts describe large, leathery, or membranous wings rather than feathers, resembling the flight structures of Quetzalcoatlus or the Pteranodon. Some depictions even include a large bony crest atop the head, a distinctive trait seen in pterosaurs like Nyctosaurus and the Tapagera. Furthermore, while birds possess sharp talons, certain Thunderbird stories describe elongated, grasping claws that again seem more reptilian than avian, further supporting the idea that these legends may be rooted in real encounters with surviving pterosaurs. The Lakota Sioux, the Algonquin, and the Ojibwe tribes all have Thunderbird stories that describe creatures with distinctly reptilian traits, massive size, and wingspans exceeding 20 feet. These beings are often linked to storms, possibly reflecting how large pterosaurs, like modern avian birds of prey, could have ridden upon air currents. Many birds of prey rely on soaring techniques to navigate the skies, such as eagles, hawks, falcons, and vultures. These birds use thermal updrafts and air currents to gain altitude with minimal effort, allowing them to cover vast distances while conserving energy. This flight pattern is relevant to my Thunderbird pterosaur hypothesis because some large pterosaurs, like Quetzalcoatlus, were likely what's known as thermal soarers. Pterosaurs, with their enormous wingspans and lightweight skeletal structures, could have exploited wind currents in storm systems to travel great distances. Since native accounts associate Thunderbirds arriving before or during storms, this could indicate that these creatures use storm-related air currents to move efficiently, just like modern birds of prey. The massive wings of pterosaur-like Thunderbirds could theoretically produce loud noises, which might explain why many native stories associate Thunderbirds with thunderclaps and roaring sounds. Its sheer size and wing structure could easily generate a variety of distinct noises, from deep, booming reverberations to whistling wind effects. Several factors contribute to this possibility. Large birds like eagles and condors already produce audible wing beats, especially in still air. A creature several times larger, such as Quetzalcoatlus, which had a wingspan of 30 to 40 feet, would naturally generate even louder sounds when taking off or flapping. Some pterosaur models suggest they launched using all four of their limbs, meaning their initial thrust would displace a large amount of air, potentially producing a low, booming sound. Additionally, the sheer surface area of their wings could create a deep, resonant noise, much like the whoosh of a passing jet, but at a lower, more thunderous frequency. As large wings cut through the air, they create vortices, or spiraling air disturbances similar to the wake turbulence caused by aircraft. Large birds already produce a hissing or rushing sound due to air resistance, and a pterosaur-like Thunderbird soaring through the sky ahead of a storm could amplify these sound effects, producing a deep rumble or booming resonance. This could contribute to the legend of Thunderbirds bringing storms, as their flight may have coincided with strong winds and other atmospheric changes. Many large birds, such as peregrine falcons, generate a whistling or roaring noise when they dive at high speeds. If Thunderbirds were capable of rapid dives or maneuvering at extreme velocities, these massive wings could cut through the air with a howling, thunderous sound. Additionally, if pterosaurs used their wings to manipulate airflow, similar to how modern gliders adjust their wings, they might have created resonant, low-frequency noises that could have been misinterpreted as distant thunder. Many Native American myths describe Thunderbirds as controlling storms, which raises the possibility that the natural sounds of their wings were interpreted as thunder itself. Among the Kwakiutl and Tlingit tribes, it was believed that when a Thunderbird flapped its wings, it produced the sound of thunder, and while it blinked its eyes, it created lightning. This could be a poetic way of describing the loud, forceful wing beats of an actual enormous creature that once soared over the Pacific Northwest. The descriptions of their sound align with how massive winged predators could have interacted with the air and the environment. So, these creatures may have used storm currents, generated powerful wing beats, and created deep, resonant sounds, all of which could have fueled the enduring legends of the Thunderbird as a sky-dwelling force of nature. The Kwakiutl and Haida tribes go even further, depicting Thunderbirds as powerful enough to attack and lift some whales, an impossible feat for any known bird, but plausible for a gigantic pterosaur. Similarly, the Zuni and Hopi tribes have legends of flying serpents that descend from the sky to snatch prey, further supporting the idea that these myths may be based on real encounters with large reptilian flying creatures. Beyond the indigenous accounts, there are historical reports of massive flying creatures existing, suggesting that pterosaurs or something like them may have been seen in more recent times as well. These accounts span multiple centuries and locations, often describing featherless, bat-like creatures with enormous wingspans. The skeptics will give the typical objections that argue these are misidentifications of large birds, but the consistency of the descriptions raises intriguing possibilities. Let's consider some of the accounts from the 19th century. One of the most famous early reports comes from Tombstone, Arizona. In April of 1890, there was an article said to be published in the Tombstone Epitaph describing two cowboys shooting a giant featherless flying reptile out of the sky. According to the report, the two ranchers were riding near Tombstone when they saw the enormous flying creature with large, leathery wings, no feathers, and a long beak. They described the creature as having smooth, bat-like wings with a span of approximately 16 to 20 feet. The cowboys pursued it on horseback, eventually shooting it down with their rifles. The article further stated that they cut off part of its wing and took it back to town where locals examined it. The creature was compared to prehistoric reptiles, with many suggesting it resembled a pteranodon, a type of pterosaur known for its long beak and massive wingspan. Sadly, despite the detailed report, no physical remains, photographs, or drawings from the time have ever been found. In the 1870s, California settlers reported sightings of massive, bat-winged creatures attacking livestock, suggesting an airborne predator far larger than any known bird. Similarly, in Texas during the 1860s, ranchers near the Rio Grande claimed to witness gigantic flying reptiles hunting deer, reinforcing the notion that these creatures are not just confined to ancient history or myth. Moving forward in time, as recently as the 20th and 21st centuries, reports of giant winged creatures have continued. In Illinois, 1948, multiple witnesses described a bat-like flying creature with an estimated wingspan of 25 feet, far larger than any known bird in the region. More recently, in Alaska, 2002 even, a pilot and passengers spotted a huge bird-like creature with no feathers soaring over the landscape with an estimated wingspan between 15 and 20 feet. In Chile, 2004, a group of fishermen claimed to see a leathery winged reptilian creature flying over the ocean, further fueling speculation that pterosaurs or something similar may still exist in the remote areas of our globe. These sightings, spanning continents and centuries, suggest that there may be more to the Thunderbird legend than mere folklore, and that there is reason to doubt the mainstream narratives that these creatures disappeared millions and millions of years ago. Mainstream science argues that pterosaurs went extinct 66 million years ago, but there are plenty of reasons to challenge this belief that go beyond the scriptures. One of the strongest arguments is that the fossil record is incomplete, particularly for large flying creatures, which are exceptionally rare due to their fragile bones and low fossilization potential. Fossils only form under specific conditions, as it is, requiring rapid burial and protection from scavengers, which is far less likely for airborne species that lived in an open landscape or coastal region where sedimentation was minimal. Entire groups of animals have left little to no fossil evidence, so it remains plausible that some pterosaurs could have survived much longer than currently believed. I love the coelacanth because this fish further pokes holes in all the mainstream narratives. The coelacanth is a fish that was said to be extinct for over 80 million years, but guess who was discovered alive in 1938? Yep, coelacanths. They're also one of the many so-called living fossils because mainstream science says that they've been around 420 million years, but guess what fish hasn't changed in over 420 million years? Yep, the coelacanth. It looks the same today as it did in the fossil record, supposedly hundreds of millions of years old. You see why the timelines needed for their so-called evolution just get longer and longer and more absurd? I know why the coelacanth hasn't changed much from the fossil record. Because it didn't go extinct 80 million years ago. Turns out it didn't go extinct at all. We just couldn't find them. But it's also because it didn't exist 420 million years ago. Because nothing else did either. Only Yahweh. The Pacific Northwest, Amazon rainforest, and deep caves in Mexico are some of the vast, unexplored areas where relic populations of pterosaurs could exist unseen by the majority, just like the coelacanth. Reports from Africa, Papua New Guinea, and South America suggest large flying creatures still exist in those remote regions. These cryptids have been witnessed by local tribes, explorers, missionaries, and even military personnel, further fueling speculation that a relic population of ancient flying reptiles may still exist. Let's talk about some of them. The Kangamato is a cryptid reported in Zambia, Angola, and the Congo Basin. It's described as a large bat-like creature with a leathery wingspan between 4 and 7 feet. Unlike birds, it is said to have no feathers, a long beak, and sharp teeth, resembling a pterosaur rather than a modern avian species. Locals claim that the Kangamato is highly territorial, often attacking canoes and fishermen on rivers, leading to its name, which translates to overturner of boats. The first recorded Western encounter with Kangamato came in 1923 when a British explorer and anthropologist named Frank H. Melland interviewed local tribes in Zambia. The descriptions he received of a featherless flying creature with reptilian features closely resemble a pterosaur. In 1932, well-known cryptozoologist Ivan Sanderson reported seeing a huge black bat-like creature in Cameroon. Another notable incident occurred in 1956 when an engineer in Zambia was hospitalized after an attack by a giant winged creature. When shown images of pterosaurs, locals identified the attacker as a Kangamato, reinforcing the idea that these reports could be based on encounters with a surviving ancient species. The Congo Basin is one of the least explored places on the planet, with dense rainforests that could easily harbor undiscovered or long-thought-dead species. Given that pterosaurs thrived in coastal and river environments, this matches the Kangamato's reported habitat. Some paleontologists have even suggested that if pterosaurs did in fact survive, they may have adopted nocturnal predator tendencies, explaining why they have remained so elusive. The combination of consistent local reports, the vast unexplored terrain, and the historical sightings certainly raise the possibility that a relic population of pterosaurs may still exist in Africa. Papua New Guinea has a creature they call the ropen, or dinosaur bird. The ropen is a cryptid reported in Manus Island, Umboy Island, and other remote regions of Papua New Guinea. Witnesses describe it as a giant bat-like creature with a wingspan of 12 to 30 feet. Unlike conventional birds, the ropen is said to have glowing bioluminescent eyes or skin, making it visible at night. Its key features include a long tail with a diamond-shaped or spade-like tip, a tooth-filled beak, and leathery wings, strongly resembling a Rhamphorhynchus-type pterosaur rather than a modern bird or bat. One of the earliest reports of this creature came from during World War II, around 1944, when an American pilot, Dwayne Hodgkinson, claimed to have seen a huge, flying reptilian creature with a wingspan of at least 20 feet. In 1994, a missionary named Jim Bloom gathered multiple eyewitness testimonies from local villagers, all of whom described a large, featherless flying creature with a long tail and what appeared to be glowing skin. And later in 2004, explorer Jonathan Whitcomb led an expedition to Umboy Island, where he found that numerous villagers consistently described the ropen as real, as a living creature, not a mythological one, and not one they simply found the bones for one day and decided to make up some legends around. One of the most unique things about some of the reports of this creature is the bioluminescence, the glowing skin aspect. Before you scoff at it, remember it is more than scientifically plausible, as it is seen in fireflies, some deep sea fish, and some fungi. So it's not impossible that a larger creature, even a surviving pterosaur species, could have some glow-in-the-dark aspect, perhaps for hunting or maybe mating purposes. The dense remote jungles of Papua New Guinea are also some of the least explored environments on the Earth. This would provide the perfect hidden habitat for a large elusive species. Back to the Americas, this time to South American pterosaur sightings. In South America, particularly regions in Venezuela, Brazil, and the Andes Mountains, there is a long history of sightings of massive, featherless flying creatures. Witnesses describe them as having bat-like wings that span over 15 feet, with some accounts specifically mentioning a long, beak-like snout filled with visible teeth. Locals often refer to these creatures as La Bestia Alada, the winged beast. In 1947, Venezuelan gold miners described being buzzed by a giant leathery winged creature while working deep in the jungle. Then in 1976, fishermen near the Amazon River reported seeing a huge winged creature hunting fish and using its beak in a manner similar to how pterosaurs like Pteranodon are believed to have fed. More recently, throughout the 1990s, multiple reports have surfaced from the Andes Mountains where locals described encounters with a flying dragon, potentially a high-altitude pterosaur species that may have adapted to colder climates. Like our other regions described, the Amazon rainforest remains one of the most unexplored areas in the world. making it entirely possible that undiscovered or long-thought-dead species may still exist. The deep caves and mountainous terrain of the Andes could provide safe, hidden habitats for flying reptilian creatures as well, allowing them to remain undetected. If pterosaurs survived and adopted into nocturnal or crepuscular hunters, their rare sightings could be explained by their secretive behavior. Like the creatures, given the consistency of witness descriptions, the isolation of their habitats, and the precedent of living fossils like the coelacanth, the possibility of living pterosaurs in South America remains a subject of serious interest among cryptozoologists. Across Africa, Papua New Guinea, and South America, there are recurring descriptions of these large, featherless, flying creatures with bat-like wings, long beaks, and reptilian features. These reports consistently resemble pterosaurs more than any known modern bird or bat, raising the possibility, as I've stated multiple times, that a relic population of these ancient creatures may still exist in isolated regions. All of this most certainly applies to our opening cryptid today as well. We started our episode with the legendary Mokele Mbembe. Just as the accounts of pterosaur-like creatures are not one-offs, neither are the sauropod-like accounts like Mokele Mbembe. Before the famous 1913 account of Mokele Mbembe, there was a tale from the 1776 book entitled History of Loango, Kokanga, and Other Kingdoms in Africa that was written by a French missionary to the Congo River region named Lévin Bonaventure Prayart. Among numerous observations about the local plants, animals, and indigenous peoples detailed in his book, Bonaventure reported discovering enormous footprints in the region. Though the creature responsible for the tracks was not seen, he wrote that it must have been monstrous. The marks of the claws were noted on the ground, and these formed a print about 3 feet in circumference. A large theropod dinosaur, like an Allosaurus, would have had footprints in the 2.5 to 3.5 foot range. Going back to the 1900s, but staying in the Congo, it was 1909 when Lieutenant Paul Gratz gave an account that documented indigenous legends from the Congo River Basin around present-day Zambia, describing a creature known as the Nisanga. The Nisanga was said to inhabit the Lake Bangweulu region, and according to Gratz, the creature was like a sauropod, just like the Mokele Mbembe, making this one of the earliest recorded instances of a local legend being associated with dinosaurs. During his visit to Umbawala Island, Gratz not only heard stories of the Nisanga, but was also shown a hide which locals claimed belonged to the mysterious creature. In that same year, we find other reports of Mokele Mbembe-like creatures in the autobiography of Carl Hagenbeck. Hagenbeck was a famous big game hunter, and he wrote a book about his life entitled Beasts and Men. In this book, he states that multiple independent sources described a mysterious creature living in the Congo region, portraying it as a being that combined features of both an elephant and a dragon. A naturalist named Joseph Menges also informed Hagenbeck of an alleged creature in Africa described as, quote, some kind of dinosaur seemingly akin to the brontosaurus. Another of Hagenbeck's sources, Hans Schmomberg, reported an unusual absence of hippopotamus while visiting Lake Bangweulu. When he inquired about this, his native guides attribute it to a massive hippo-killing creature said to inhabit the lake. If you recall, this was also a behavior that was attributed to Mokele Mbembe. In 1938, explorer Leo von Boxberger launched an expedition to investigate reports of Mokele Mbembe. He collected valuable information from local tribes, but his notes and sketches are said to be lost during a conflict with local villagers, leaving much of his research undocumented. A year later, the German Colonial Gazette from Angola published a letter from Frau Ilse von Nold, who claimed to have heard multiple eyewitness accounts from both natives and settlers describing a mysterious creature called Koye ya Menia, translated as water lion. She described it as long-necked, roughly the size of a hippopotamus or larger, and known for attacking hippos. However, it was never seen consuming them, suggesting it was not a predator. Missionary Eugene Thomas, who had been working in the Congo since 1955, recounted a striking incident from 1959. According to members of the Bangambe tribe, they had constructed a spiked barrier in a tributary of Lake Tele to keep Mokele Mbembe away from their fishing waters. Apparently, one of the creatures forced its way through, becoming impaled on the stakes. The villagers then killed it and held a feast, consuming its meat. However, many who ate the flesh later died, leading some to believe the event marked the beginning of mystical associations with Mokele Mbembe. In 1966, explorer Yvon Riddell photographed a large 3-toed footprint in the Congo Basin northeast of Lubomo. This was noteworthy because hippopotamus, the most common large animal in the area, have 4 toes, making this large footprint discovery an anomaly. The accounts continue through the 80s, and attempts to find more concrete evidence continued even into the 2000s, but sadly we have nothing conclusive. You've already noticed, I'm sure, that Mokele Mbembe isn't the only dinosaur-like cryptid that may be hiding in the Congo. Let's now touch upon an even more aggressive one, the Emela Ntuku, or elephant killer. For centuries, tribes deep in the Congo basin have spoken in hushed tones about a massive horned beast lurking in the rivers and swamps. Emela Ntuku is allegedly far more territorial and aggressive than the Mokele Mbembe. They say that it will attack anything that dares invade its domain. The name itself literally means the one who kills elephants in Lingala, and if that doesn't give you chills, just wait. In 1909, Lieutenant Paul Gratz, the same colonial officer in Zambia that spoke of Nasanga, documented reports of this strange and dangerous creature. Locals described a horned, semi-aquatic beast that lurked in the remote swamps. It wasn't a rhino, they insisted it was something quite different, something they greatly feared. Over the next century, cryptozoologists, including famous names like Dr. Roy Mackal and William Gibbons, gathered even more reports from hunters, missionaries, and locals who had all encountered something large, reptilian, and unlike anything officially known to science. If we take the eyewitness reports at face value, it doesn't match any known animal. It's too big and aggressive to be a forest buffalo. It's not a rhinoceros. The people of the Congo know what a rhino looks like, and they insist this is something else. Some cryptozoologists have suggested it could be a relic population of ceratopsian dinosaurs like Styracosaurus or Triceratops. For the believers and the skeptics alike who are annoyed that we don't have anything tangible for the creatures like Mokele Mbembe, the Nasanga, or Emela Ntuku, we do have fossil evidence of such creatures. We've just been told they're not around anymore. But that's what we were told about the coelacanth as well. And just so you don't get annoyed with me continually bringing up my favorite fish, let's consider some others. There's the Laotian rock rat, also called the Lazarus squirrel, another so-called living fossil that was rediscovered in 1996, said to be extinct 11 million years ago. By the way, he looks just the same too. The giant Palaus earthworm was discovered or rediscovered, depending on who you ask, in my own backyard in 2005. In Washington state, they found this mysterious giant worm said to be 3 feet long and capable of spitting at predators. It was considered extinct by some and an urban legend by others, but it was indeed found in 2005. If cryptids can be hiding in plain sight in the United States, what about the uncharted swamps of Africa or some treacherous South American rainforest? The takahe of New Zealand was also thought to be wiped out. The takahe is a large flightless bird, and it was declared extinct in 1898 after hunting and habitat destruction wiped out other flightless species in the region. For 50 years, everyone thought it was gone forever, until a hiker stumbled upon a group of them living deep in the mountains in 1948. If a massive human-sized bird can stay hidden for decades, how much easier would it be for something living in the vast rainforests of Africa or the rigid Andes Mountains? The Fernandina Galapagos tortoise was said to be extinct for 112 years. They said it was gone back in 1906. But guess what was rediscovered in 2019? Yup, the Galapagos tortoise. A female Fernandina giant tortoise was found on a volcanic island in the Galapagos, despite scientists believing the species was extinct since 1906. One of the rarest species of tortoise survived completely unnoticed for over a century. They had been surviving all along, just in a place where humans rarely ventured. Could something larger be hiding in an untouched wilderness, just waiting to be rediscovered? Then there's the Chicoan peccary, or the living fossil pig, believed extinct over 10,000 years ago, but rediscovered in Paraguay in 1975. A prehistoric pig-like creature that was supposed to have gone extinct at the end of the Ice Age. For decades, the only evidence of the Chicoan peccary came from fossils. Scientists assumed it had died out thousands of years ago until a herd of them was spotted in the forest of South America. The large hoofed mammal hadn't changed a bit, thought to be extinct for thousands of years. It turned out to be alive. Could the same be true for other so-called prehistoric giants? And if it was found to be true, would you be allowed to know about it? Or could the news be so paradigm shifting that it would be concealed?
Scientists would never lie to prove themselves right.
Are you kidding me? There have been several cases where scientists have been caught falsifying evidence or misrepresenting data to support evolutionary claims. Recent history has shown that some individuals have deliberately manipulated findings to deceive the public and bolster evolutionary narratives. Let's start with a big one. We have the Piltdown Man from 1912. It's the biggest evolution hoax there is. In 1912, British archaeologist Charles Dawson claimed to have discovered the missing link between apes and humans. The fossil, called Piltdown Man, included a human-like skull and an ape-like jaw, supposedly proving human evolution. For over 40 years, textbooks and museums taught it as fact. But the fraud was exposed in 1953. How? Scientists conducted chemical tests and found that the jawbone actually came from an orangutan, and the skull was only 600 years old. The bones had been deliberately stained and filed down to make them appear ancient. Piltdown Man was a complete fraud, but it had already influenced generations of evolutionary thinking. Artistic depictions are a consistent use of fraud among evolutionists. Haeckel's embryo drawings from 1868 are a huge example of this. German biologist Ernst Haeckel published drawings of embryos of different species, claiming that human embryos resemble fish, amphibians, and reptiles at different stages. His idea, called recapitulation theory, suggested that human embryos retrace evolutionary history before birth. But Haeckel's peers discovered that he had faked his drawings, exaggerating similarities between the embryos. Real embryo photos showed that his sketches were highly inaccurate, yet they continued to be used in textbooks for decades. Heck, even some modern biology textbooks still reference Haeckel's fraudulent images, despite scientists knowing they're false and manufactured. Why did he do it? Haeckel was a devoted Darwinist and wanted to prove that humans evolved from lower animals, and he was willing to lie and create evidence to do it. Let's keep this demonic train rolling, shall we, and show you this crap is still happening. There was the Archaeoraptor of 1999. It was a fake dino bird fossil. National Geographic announced in 1999 that a missing link between dinosaurs and birds had finally been discovered in China. Being called the Archaeoraptor, the fossil had a dinosaur's tail and a bird's body, appearing to confirm that birds evolved from dinosaurs, one of the most ridiculous ideas of the modern day. How was this fraud exposed? Within a year, scientists realized that the fossil was a fake. It was a mix of two different fossils glued together. It turned out the Chinese fossil dealers had taken parts of a dinosaur and a primitive bird and forged a new species to sell it at a high price. Despite being a known forgery, Archaeoraptor was widely publicized as proof of dino-to-bird evolution. National Geographic was so eager to promote evolutionary discoveries, it failed to properly verify the fossil before publishing. Then there's the scandal with the peppered moths from the 1950s. Evolutionary biologists claim that the peppered moths evolved from light to dark colors due to pollution during the Industrial Revolution. The famous textbook images showed dark moths resting on tree trunks, demonstrating natural selection in action. This fraud was exposed in the 1990s when scientists discovered that the photos were staged. Moths don't actually rest on tree trunks like that. Researchers were found to have glued dead moths on the tree bark to take the pictures. While there was some real data on moth population shifts, the staged images were used to mislead students into thinking the evidence was stronger than it really was. These are not just mistakes, folks. They are deliberate fabrications used to support evolutionary narratives. Some scientists are willing to lie to prove evolution because they want to uphold a materialistic, godless view of the world. Many of these frauds were exposed by other scientists, proving that not all science is bad, but bad science and bad scientists most certainly do exist. Even after being exposed, many of these hoaxes still appear in textbooks today because evolutionary theory is too deeply ingrained in academia. We're constantly told that macroevolution is a fact, that the science is settled, that the fossil record has all the answers. But what happens when the so-called proof turns out to be fake? From Haeckel's fraudulent embryo drawings to Piltdown Man, one of the biggest hoaxes in history, there have been plenty of times where scientists were caught outright lying to push an evolutionary agenda. The question is, if their evidence is so strong, why do they keep making things up? Let's mention one more due to its significance and influence. Many of you have heard of Lucy from back in 1974, right? In 1974, paleoanthropologist Donald Johanson discovered 40% of a skeleton in Ethiopia. Not the whole thing, keep that in mind, only 40% of it. The fossil was named Lucy, and it was classified as Australopithecus afarensis. They claimed it to be a key link in human evolution. You remember the images. They've been plastered in every textbook and museum on the planet. The images always depict Lucy as walking upright as our early human ancestor. But guess what? Not only was Lucy's skeleton actually more similar to a chimpanzee than a human, her hands and feet weren't even found. Yet in all of these fancy artistic reconstructions, what did you see? They conveniently added these human-like hands and feet to fit their evolutionary claims. Later CT scans of her bones revealed she walked on all fours and not upright. Scientists wanted Lucy to be an early human so badly they ignored the evidence that contradicted this view and filled in the rest with cute art that fit their preconceived notions. But it's worse than that. Some researchers have admitted that the reconstruction of Lucy's hip bone was modified to make it look more human-like. Dr. Owen Lovejoy, one of the scientists involved, literally reshaped the hip bones using a plaster cast to force it to fit an upright walking model. Lucy is held up as one of the most famous missing links in human evolution, but the evidence tells a totally different story. She had the brain the size of a chimp's, and though we didn't find her hands, we found her wrists. Lucy's wrist bones provide further evidence that she was a knuckle walker like other chimps and did not walk upright like some human ancestor. Chimpanzees and gorillas have specialized wrist bones that lock into place to support their body weight while they're walking on their knuckles. Lucy's wrist bones showed the same mechanisms, meaning she was likely built for knuckle walking, not full-time bipedal walking like humans, as they want you to believe. Lucy wasn't walking around like a primitive human. She was an ape, through and through. And worst of all, scientists literally had to reshape her hip bones to make them look more human-like. And yet museums and textbooks hide all this information because it doesn't fit the neat humans evolved from apes fairy tale. If the evidence was so strong and so clear, why do they constantly have to fake it and make it up? My friends, you are fearfully and wonderfully made. Do we share some similarities with other creatures on this wet dirt rock? Why, yes. But that's only because we have the same designer. I hate macroevolution. Darwin and his ideas have done more damage than most people realize, and that's a topic that will come up again and again. And I fully believe that all of the massive timelines that we've been fed have been manufactured like Lucy's hands and feet in order to make up for all the clear, massive issues with such a flawed theory. You're free to disagree, my friend, but I hope you have good reason to do so. I feel I have good reason to doubt and question all the mainstream narratives and the people giving them. And because they've been caught lying and manipulating so often, whenever there is an apparent conflict between science and the Bible, I will always allow the Bible to be the final authority. I'm aware that there are some conundrums in Genesis 1, especially the question of light before the creation of the sun. But even in that, the Bible tells me that one day Christians will dwell in a city with Christ where He Himself is the illumination. The Bible is not a science book, but because it's divinely inspired, I fully believe when it does speak on matters pertaining to science, it does so accurately. I know my rejection of old Earth and evolution will put me at odds with some in my audience, but I hope I at least gave you some good reasons why I differ from many within this sphere. I hope you have seen the last few months I love the Bible and I love science. I don't believe them to be in conflict, and when they appear to be, I know that there is simply something that I don't know or that we don't know just yet. Remember, my friends, unity does not require uniformity. You don't have to agree with everything I said, and I don't have to agree with you on everything, but we can still kick it, and we can still love and respect one another. And if you've made it this far into the episode, please know that I have the utmost love and respect for you. As always, tons more could be said on these matters, but I'm not going anywhere, and I hope you're not either. Until next time, if you want to stay up to date with the goings-on, go find me on social media at The Dancing Toaster, Facebook and Instagram. They're where I'm at. Once again, thank you to my new patrons. Got a lot more with the announcement of the exclusive content. The Man-Eating Toaster is going to be spicy, coming later this month. Your support means the world to me, and to those who gave through Buy Me a Coffee, you truly blessed me and my family this week. I can't thank you enough. If you're not supporting The Dancing Toaster, I'd ask that you prayerfully consider it. We broke 10K downloads and views last month, a huge milestone, so another thank you is in order. If everybody helped out a little, it'd go a long way, but if you can't, Again, you listening, following, subscribing, liking, and sharing all that I'm doing, it means so much to me. It blesses me more than you know every week. If you enjoy the show, please continue to like, continue to follow, share, leave me a review, go subscribe to the YouTube channel even if you don't listen to it on YouTube. Do all the things wherever you consume the Dancing Toaster, but whatever you do, don't consume toasters, and don't let any long-lost dinosaurs consume you. I love you. I'm out.
Report suspicious activities and call 911 for immediate response. Expect delay.
Nobody else moving tags in from the south. Stand by. Flight 022. Maintain approach. You're clear for runway.
Expect traffic delays and restrictions. Take personal security precautions to avoid becoming a victim of an attack. Avoid crowded public areas and gatherings.
Thunderbirds 27 maintaining southbound runway 8 kilo holding.
Not travel to areas affected by the attack or in a known area of elevated virus activity. Keep emergency supplies accessible and a full tank of gas at all times.
Be careful.
Government officials insist that this is isolated incident of attack in the suspect, known as perhaps. We will continue to inform